All right, hello everyone. How's everybody doing out there? I'm Jerry Langlois coming to you from Houmas House Estate and Gardens. So good to be back in our old kitchen. You know, this kitchen dates back to 1773. I love cooking in it every Thursday and doing these live demos. I was out last week on a little vacation, oddly enough. Believe it or not, they actually let me off for a short time every now and then. And I took a little vacation, so we weren't here, but also I'm just excited to be back, and we're going to be cooking. You know, we're entering this stage of Louisiana where we're now officially in Lent season. For those of you who might not be familiar with that, that's the period after Ash Wednesday, a Catholic holiday, where we often in Louisiana, with Catholicism just being such a predominant religion here in New Orleans and in Louisiana in particular, that there's a lot of traditions that have shaped our food culture as well. And one of them is not eating meat on Fridays during Lent. So to honor that, although we're not going to not do meat or anything, we're going to continue to do all different kind of things. We are definitely going to do a lot more seafood because we love Louisiana seafood. We love the season. We're also coming into that crawfish. We're in early crawfish season right now in Louisiana. We kind of reach peak crawfish season around April, right around Easter, but crawfish bowls are starting to happen. So I love incorporating all these things. And then one thing I also love doing is taking things that we're familiar with and reimagining them. So what we're going to do is some crawfish and corn beignets. We're going to take the classic New Orleans style beignet, which is like a fried donut that you put powdered sugar on, but we're going to take a savory twist on it, and we're going to add crawfish and corn to it. Now the corn is significant too, because in Louisiana, when we do our crawfish boils, when you boil your crawfish, and you also oftentimes throw in potatoes and corn, they just go together just like Forrest Gump, peas and what did they say? Peas and carrots. Me and Jenny was like peas and carrots. Well, crawfish and corn goes together like peas and carrots. So hey, let's jump in and get started. Now, a traditional New Orleans style beignet is very much like a donut. You would take flour, you would bloom some yeast, you would mix that in, you would actually let that proof, meaning you let the yeast activate, and then you roll it out, and then you fry them. But what we're going to do is watch how simple this is. Actually, I have a good bit of ingredients here, but watch how fast this comes together, because we're not going to use yeast. And the first thing I do is, look, follow along. Like always, our recipes are on our Houmas House website, houmashouse.com. Click the resource tab. You'll get a menu, recipes. Follow along with me, and we'll also be posting the recipe on our Facebook page as well. We're going to start off with 2 cups of flour. Now, we're not using yeast, but we're going to put in here a tablespoon of baking powder. Baking powder is what's going to cause, just like the yeast or the baking powder, is going to cause this mixture to be fluffy and rise. Now, we're making a savory beignet, not a sweet beignet, so we're going to add some savory spices to it. I got a teaspoon of salt, that's in there, and I got a tablespoon of, look, I'm going to shake this in, but this is Creole seasoning. Now, Creole seasoning is very common here in Louisiana. It's just a spice mix of, cayenne pepper, garlic, salt, celery salts, different herbs, Tony Chachere's, Zatarans. They all make great Creole seasoning mixes, and we put a little in there. Now we have some vegetables or seasoning, not seasonings, but seasonings like garlic, some thinly sliced green onions, a little bit of chopped parsley, and a little bit of fresh thyme leaves. Again, this is thyme right here. Literally, you can just take right off the stem. You can take some fresh thyme. I chopped it up a little because it releases some of the oils, but you just don't want to eat the wooden part because it's fibrous, but you can just gently pull those leaves right off of it, and they can go right into your mix. We're not going to use a whole bunch. That's just going to go right in. Again, since we have corn, this is a little bit of fresh corn that I'm going to put in here. However, you can use canned corn if you drain it off real good. You really want to drain it off well, because you don't want to have too much liquid in it, because that might make your batter too thin. But frozen corn, a little frozen corn can go in there as well, and it would be fantastic. And then this is all our dry ingredients, and I wanted to show you this is what we look like once this is all our dry ingredients. We're going to add milk next, but anytime I'm ever making a dough or a batter, 9 times out of 10, I like to mix all my dry ingredients first and then incorporate my wet ingredients. And the reason, anything that would be liquid. Now, if you were making, say, a cake batter, it would be that wet ingredients would be your milk and your eggs and things like that. Here, I have 2 cups of milk, and I'm going to add this into it. And what that's going to do is, or the reason I decided to add that last is because if you have your wet ingredients in first and try to add dry to it, it actually will make, it's more likely that you'll get a few lumps. We don't want that. So I'm going to start to mix that in. Got some hot sauce, depending on how much spice you like. I'm going to put a couple dashes right in there. And now we're just going to mix this in with a whisk. Start to fold that together and come in. And then right at the end, get all that excess off, I'm going to add in a pack of crawfish. Now look, let's talk about this. Louisiana crawfish, always what you're looking for. Louisiana crawfish, you know, you always want to avoid Chinese crawfish. That's oftentimes half the cost in your store. However, you can't beat Louisiana crawfish. Chinese crawfish is oftentimes a completely different species of the crawfish that you find here in Louisiana. Sometimes you might see Spanish crawfish, and while, again, I'm always going to be the person that goes for Louisiana crawfish, but at least Spanish crawfish is the same type of species of crawfish that are here native to Louisiana, but you can't beat Louisiana crawfish. So we're going to dump some right in here, and then I'm going to take this spatula, and then I'm just going to fold these crawfish into this batter that I'm making, or this dough. And look how easy this is. Again, I love this recipe so much compared to, or just, I love the simplicity of this recipe, because a traditional New Orleans style beignet, you're working with yeast, and while that's fine, by adding the baking soda instead of yeast, it's literally throw everything in the bowl, mix it up, and you're good to go. Whenever you're fooling with yeast, you have to proof it, which means you have to let it sit in a warm place and covered and let it rise, and then you come back, and this just eliminates that step. So now we're at this point. We're going to move over to our deep fryer over here, and we're ready to fry these bad boys up. So let's just talk a couple of things about frying before we get started. The first thing that you'll notice is I'm using, this is, you know, I went and bought this just for doing these cooking demos, because this is the cheapest entry-level deep tabletop fryer that they sell at any store, any department store, anything that you can find. It's called a Fry Daddy. But to me, if you could consider doing any kind of deep frying at home, I would highly encourage you to invest a little bit of money. I think this is 25 bucks. Invest the money in this, because of course you can set up a pot on a stove with some oil, with a thermometer, and you can manage it yourself by heating up the oil to 350 degrees. But this just makes frying so much easier, because you just set the little dial to the temperature that you want, and you can just forget about it. It's got its own thermostat. If it gets too hot, it's going to kick off. If it gets too cold, it's going to kick back on. So it just makes life so much easier. So if you ever want to do any frying at home, or you see yourself doing some frying at home, invest in this. It's going to make your life so easy. Now, I got me a little scoop, kind of like a little cafeteria scoop, and I want you to look at how small this is. This really isn't a big scoop. We're making an appetizer-sized little bites of beignets, but what you're going to notice is, while this is a pretty small scoop, once it starts to fry, they're really going to poof up. Like, they'll probably double in size. So if you were to, so I'm using a small scoop, or if you didn't have a scoop at home, which I would imagine most people at home trying this are going to have it, I would suggest doing a dip with a smaller spoon as opposed to a big spoon, because you'll be surprised how these puff up. Let's go ahead and get started and get a few going in here. Again, oil set to 350 degrees, and I'm just going to kind of carefully, of course, hot oil. Anytime you're working with hot oil, you want to be extra careful. And we're just going to start dropping some of these in here, and they're going to just start frying away. So just, again, deep frying 101, guys. Clean oil. It's always going to make whatever you're cooking great. Don't overcrowd your oil. Don't overcrowd your basket or your vessel that you're cooking in, because every time, this batter is somewhat cold, so every time I'm dropping one in there, you're lowering the temperature of that fryer. So if you were to really put too much in here, if I were to all of a sudden throw a big hunk of fish or something here, it's going to lower the temperature of the oil. So you always want to never overcrowd your oil. So I'm just dropping some in here. I said I would do some with a spoon. So here, let's switch to the spoon. And look, now we're just going to get some in here. And look, we're just going to drop them right in. Just be real careful, because you're working with that hot oil. And this is real simple and rustic, guys. But, you know, adding that crawfish and the corn and making those spices in the beignet mix is really going to make this fantastic and give it that unique Louisiana flavor. However, if you were following this recipe at home and you don't have access to any of these ingredients, like crawfish, well, you can very easily, you can just do a corn beignet and just take the crawfish out, or you could very easily substitute crawfish with crab meat or shrimp. You cook the shrimp and the crab first, cook crab meat. You might have to, if it's too big because we're making small bites, you might want to chop them up, but you can go ahead and get that going. I'm going to move this to the side, and that would make great substitutes. I got me a nice slotted spoon, and what I want to do is, because these kind of float on the top, every now and then I just want to roll these little beignets around in the hot oil so they brown evenly. Now they actually need to fry a little bit longer than you think. They'll probably need to fry for about 5 minutes or so to really cook all the way through. Eventually, I always like to add an extra one more than we need that we can sacrifice it by cutting it down the middle and just see if it's cooked all the way. And we'll get to that in a second. But watch, so I figured while we're cooking that, let's just put together a very simple remoulade sauce. Again, watch how fast this is going to come together. I got a bowl here. I got a little bit of mayonnaise in here. And this is, I'm just going to start adding some ingredients. Any good remoulade sauce is going to have some Creole mustard in it. If you're from somewhere that doesn't have access to Creole mustard, it's a whole grain mustard. You can very easily substitute Dijon mustard. Whole grain Dijon mustard is great, but regular Dijon mustard would be absolutely fine as well. Give those a stir every now and then. Again, I saved some of the green onions and that I put in the batter, some of the parsley. We're going to add that to our sauce. We're going to come back with some lemon juice. Also, you can take that same lemon. If you got, I have a microplaner here, which I love this tool, but a cheese grater, a regular box cheese grater works just as fine. Citrus and lemon in particular and seafood go hand in hand. So we're just going to add a little bit of lemon zest into the remoulade as well. And it's just going to give it a little extra bit of brightness and that great flavor from the lemon as well. Now, one thing whenever you're grating lemon that I want y'all to just be aware of is we're looking for the yellow outside. That's the zest. So the outside of a lemon goes zest, which is the yellow. The white part underneath it is called the pith. Now, you actually don't want the pith because the pith itself can be a little bit bitter. So we only want to get that yellow part out, and this microplaner works really fantastic for that. You don't have to think about it. But a box grater sometimes with a coarser setting, you'll get a little bit of that pith in there. So just watch out for that. I have paprika. It's going to add a nice little kind of Spanish flavor to the remoulade and give it a nice pink color. A little bit of salt and, well, that was pepper. Salt and pepper. Boom. That's going to go in just to taste, however you like it. We're just going to mix all these ingredients in, and this is just a very basic white-style remoulade sauce that, again, so simple. Mayo, Creole mustard, lemon juice. Mix all that up, and then you can add whatever flavors you like in there as well. Lemon and all that goodness. All right. I think that's done right there. Set this to the side. Let's come back to our beignets. And these are just frying up absolutely beautiful. You know they're done whenever they start to get some good color on the outside and they're all floating on the top. We're just going to roll them around, and then like I said, I like to add an extra one just to see if they're cooked all the way. I'm going to take one out, and I add one extra one just to see how it's looking on the inside. So let's grab a knife. Let's cut this in half, and boom. Man, look at that. It's like I'm a professional or something. Look, I'm going to show you right here, Jesse. Now, you can see it's cooked all the way. If you were to split it in half, and like I said, it takes about 4 or 5 minutes. But if you were split it in half and it's still running, well, then you just let them go a little bit longer, and it's going to be perfect. But once you get there and they're floating, these beignets are good to go. So let's go ahead and scoop them out. I got me a little setup here to come with some paper towels, just to absorb any of that excess oil. We don't want that. We want to get as much of that off. And then, again, all these recipes are online. But let me show you one little addition that isn't on the recipe, but it's just something fun that we're going to add to it before we plate this up. So normally a traditional beignet, you would take the beignet and you got to coat it with a bunch of powdered sugar. Fantastic. So I kind of want to keep with that, but since we're making a savory beignet, what I got here is this is literally a mixture of powdered sugar and cayenne pepper. Just a little bit of cayenne pepper, but a lot of powdered sugar, and I'm just going to lightly give a sprinkling of this on here. You want to be careful with that cayenne because cayenne can be really spicy, and because we want this to be savory, we're not looking to maybe really drown it in the sugar like we would for a traditional beignet that we want to be sweet, but we're just going to put a light dusting on it, and then once we're at that point, we are ready to plate this bad boy up. Let's come here with that remoulade sauce. And this is an appetizer that we're going to be serving this Friday and Saturday here at Houmas House all day long in our Carriage House restaurant. Man, come if you're local, come on out and give these a try because we're really excited about them. We think they're going to be fantastic. But yeah, we're going to put a couple on there. We've got the remoulade. I'm going to garnish it with some of this thyme that we have put in the beignet just for fun. And as we finish up, guys, just want to go over a couple things. We are starting on the lookout on our social media pages. We have Easter and Mother's Day information. We do big blowout buffets every year, and we're going to be doing that again this year. Be looking on our Facebook pages and our socials. We'll be talking all about that. We're making those plans right now as we speak, and we would love to have y'all out. We really do a fantastic job with it. And also, we're in the midst of planning a few wine dinners. There's only a couple times during the year at Houmas House where the weather is perfect for doing these wine dinners that we do out on the front lawn under the oak trees in front of the main house that are just fantastic. We can really only do them in fall and spring because any other time of the year here in Louisiana, it's either too hot or too cold. So those will be great as well. Again, so great to be back. Love having y'all. Any questions, leave them in the comments of the video. And I would love to answer them. Do me a favor, hit the little share button as well. We love getting these out there. And other than that, we'll see you next week. Thanks so much, guys.